Hello. First tonight, the government has promised that lessons will be learned from the deaths of an elderly couple during the big freeze last week.
The bodies of Jean and Derek Randall were found in their home in Northampton last Thursday. It's thought they'd been dead for several days. Today, Northamptonshire County Council also announced a serious case review into the circumstances. Relatives have been telling Look East more about the reclusive couple, saying no one should die like that.
Derek Randall as a teenager, one of a few photographs of a man described by his family as a recluse. His sister-in-law, Kate Randall, and niece Susan have not seen him or Jean, his wife, in 3 years.
Sad, shocked. He had our phone number, so, I mean, why he didn't phone any family, I don't know, to ask for any help, I don't know. He knew Mum was here. She had spoken to him before on the phone, be it a few years ago. But to get no help at all from the authorities, I think it's shocking, and I hope it's not going to happen to anybody else.
I should hate to think that I was left there and nobody didn't help me. Time may come that I won't be able to look after myself, you know. And I should hope that, you know, that somebody would do something to help me if, you know, if I got to that stage where I couldn't do nothing, you know.
The couple were found inside their Northampton bungalow on Thursday. It's thought they'd been dead for several days. Both in their 70s, Jean had learning difficulties and needed a wheelchair. Derek was her only carer. In the weeks leading up to the couple's death, Derek had approached neighbours for help. In December, it's reported he called the authorities. On the 21st, Sally Keeble, the local MP, was contacted. She's called for an inquiry. Today, in the Commons, the Health Minister described the deaths as worrying.
My honourable friend is right. This is a deeply tragic case, Derek and Jean Randall, and what we need to do is make sure that it is fully and properly investigated.
Northampton County Council today said it would be. Their statement says, contrary to speculation, the county's key organisations were speaking with and visiting Mr and Mrs Randall throughout December. They continue. Nonetheless, we need to see if there's anything more or different which could or should have been done. The family hope a post-mortem expected tomorrow will remove some of the mystery surrounding their relatives' deaths. But they say it won't make them any less tragic. Mike Cartwright, BBC Look East, Northampton.
A man has admitted cutting up the body of a kitchen salesman and leaving it at a number of different locations. The remains of Geoffrey Howe were found in Hertfordshire and Leicestershire in March last year. 38-year-old Stephen Marshall admitted dismembering the body but denies murder. Sarah Bush, who's also on trial at St Albans Crown Court, has pleaded not guilty to both charges.
Opponents of the MP for Northampton South, Brian Binley, say he's got off lightly after he was ordered to repay £1,500 in expenses and apologise to the House of Commons. The Parliamentary Standards Committee described his actions as highly unsatisfactory. Our political correspondent Andrew Sinclair is here now. What did he do wrong?
He had a second home in London, which he rented from a company which he and his family had a 60% stake in. Now, he paid £1,500 a month in rent and then claimed it back on expenses, and this went on for 3 years. So, in effect, the taxpayer reimbursed him £58,500 for rent paid to a company which he partially owned. Now, he says rightly that this was allowed within the rules when he first became an MP, and it took him a while to get used to the changes. But in the eyes of the Parliamentary Standards Committee, this was a sustained and deliberate breach of the rules. Now, they could have imposed all sorts of sanctions, far tougher ones than the £1,500 fine. They've given him. Many other MPs are paying back thousands and thousands of pounds in expenses. So when I saw Mr Binley late last night, he was a very relieved and chastened man.
The ruling is surprising, I think, to a lot of people in that it's fairly lenient, in fact, perhaps extremely lenient. People would have perhaps expected more severe sanctions against Mr Binley.
I'm sorry, that was the wrong clip. I don't know if we're able to hear from Mr Binley, who was... I think we can hear from Mr Binley now.
No, we're having problems with technology at the moment, but I wanted to ask you whether he has actually got off lightly, because that's what the opponents are saying.
Well, the committee says the fine was low because Mr Binley gains no financial advantage. He was paying a very low rent. They also say really the parliamentary authorities should have chased him up. But there is some surprise at Westminster over how low this fine is, and it's led some people to question really whether MPs should be allowed to police themselves. And back in Northampton, Mr Binley's opponents also feel that he has got off quite lightly.
Is surprising, I think, to a lot of people in that it's fairly lenient, in fact perhaps extremely lenient. People would have perhaps expected more severe sanctions against Mr Binley. It's not really for me to second guess the Parliamentary Commissioner's thinking, but maybe he was thinking that the real sanctions will be imposed by the electorate of Northampton South on polling day.
And that was Paul Varnsbury, who is the Liberal Democrat candidate for Northampton South.
And where is Mr Binley living now?
Well, he tells me that he's now renting another home from a private agency, and the rent is much higher than it was under the old deal. So he's following the rules now, but it's costing us the taxpayer.
Andrew, thank you very much.
The racing industry in this region has been counting the cost of the bad weather. Together, Fakenham, Towcester and Huntingdon lost more than £200,000 because meetings had to be called off. And it's having a knock-on effect for everybody in the sport. This report from James Burridge.
Horse racing is used to the odd abandonment during Britain's bleak midwinter. But when you're faced with 6 inches of snow, financially, the going gets tough.
This is as bad as I've seen it. I've never seen the course, under this amount of snow, going through such a cold snap as we've got at the moment. Without a doubt, the worst I've seen. I've been here for about 10 years now, but this is tough.
In the past month, the snow and freezing conditions have meant racecourses in our region have lost out on tens of thousands of pounds. Towcester has had to cancel 2 meetings, losing around £100,000. Having already missed out on 1 meeting, Huntingdon may have to cancel a second this week, missing out on around £60,000. And when Fakenham was forced to cancel their bumper New Year's Day meeting, they also missed out on £60,000. When clerks of the course normally come to inspect ahead of a meeting, they take their stick and they go for a long walk. But after the weather we've been having, there's just no point.
There's been a complete wipeout. I mean, the whole place is shut down for 10 days, I think now. Luckily, the all-weather racing is keeping betting shops open and punters are able to bet on the all-weather. But for jumping fans, it's just a complete no-brainer. There's just everywhere's covered in snow.
And whilst the courses are suffering, so too are those preparing for race day, like the many trainers, jockeys and stable hands based in Newmarket.
It hits everybody all round. The owners, the lack of opportunities they're missing from the sport. They still have the same bills coming in each month. The people like the transport businesses, they're missing out hugely. It has a complete knock-on effect. Even the lads in the yards not getting the overtime for going racing, etc. So it doesn't just stop with horses running in the afternoons.
The fear for many in the sport is the knock-on effect these cancellations will have further down the line. From those punters who pay on the door to hospitality takings, bookmakers have also lost considerable sums. To even start to get things back to normal, they need courses for horses, and no one knows quite when they'll be ready. James Burridge, BBC Look East, in Towcester.
James Burridge reporting, and of course Julie will be here with the weather later in the programme. We'll also be asking whatever happened to swine flu. And